We're the #1 drug transshipment point in the United States of America, and one of the highest in the world. So we would not be able to do our job without the participation, federal, state, local, tribal partners. And you see our panelists here today, Sheriff Kelly Martinez, DA Summer Stephan, and Chief Roxana Kennedy are all on our executive board. So they get to control the federal money and spend it how the community sees fit based on our threat assessment. I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my lovely wife, Kimberly, my better half. So,
And in trouble.
yeah, exactly.
Remiss and in trouble.
Don't want to turn my career into a job. But anyway, we're pleased to have you. We have a sign-in sheet that's going to be going around, name, your email address and stuff like that. And then there's lunch afterwards. So I'll turn it over.
Wonderful. Thank you. Hopefully the mic, can you guys all hear me? Thank you all for being here. Sue, I really appreciate it, and thank you to David King, my husband, for setting this up. Hopefully parking wasn't an issue, and I really especially thank all of you today. And so these are the heroes. And we're going to open up to some questions afterward, but just a little brief. So Chief Kennedy hired our son Cameron. So he's a Chula Vista police officer. He's been on for just over a year. So of course I have a soft spot. Carly, my daughter here, our daughter, just graduated from Indiana Wesleyan in criminal justice. So this is really all for Carly. I'm just kidding. Who wants her? So this is a conversation that we've been wanting to have for a long time about what goes on behind the scenes in law enforcement. But we have the top law enforcement females here, and this is just such an honor, and thank you. And what mentors you are, what rock stars you are. And so I wanted to open up this conversation, and we'll probably jump in, but just a little bit. If you didn't already know, I'll read a little bit of everyone's bio, starting with Sheriff Kelly Martinez, the first female sheriff here in San Diego County, who comes from a law enforcement family, by the way. Her father was with San Diego Police Department growing up. She's born and raised here in San Diego, so kudos to you. But Sheriff Martinez has served the residents of San Diego County and the Sheriff's Department since 1985, seen lots of changes, I'm sure, and now you're implementing lots of changes. She began her career as a deputy working in the jails, and I thought it was funny when I just talked to you, they used to call them matrons of the jails. Wow, we've come far, haven't we? So that sounds so old-fashioned. Yeah, I don't even know that. I was like, matrons, wow. And so now, how many, okay, let's see, I just read something. What is it, 4,200 square miles of enforcement. Is that correct still?
Yeah, we have 4,200 square miles of unincorporated county, plus 9 contract cities, 18 Indian reservations, which is more tribes than anywhere else in the country. We have 7 jails, and we are responsible for security of courthouses.
Wow. So just, that's so fascinating. But can you just talk a little bit about your pathway? So I'm not reading it because, you know, we're all here, we want to know. You're from San Diego, your dad was in law enforcement, but you didn't really think about that, did you?
No, you know, I really didn't. I didn't think about law enforcement at all. I was a waitress at a Denny's on night shift. My dad and his team would come in and have coffee, and one of them actually told me I shouldn't stay a waitress my whole life and to put in for law enforcement. And honestly, my dad, once I got hired, he didn't talk to me until I graduated the academy, and I always thought it was because he was mad at me for getting into this profession, but he was actually afraid for me because he knew how women were treated in those days, in law enforcement, excuse me. But so I started as a deputy sheriff, and we all started in the women's jail at that time. They didn't have women in the men's jails. And so I was there for about a year, and they decided to, I think it was an experiment, I don't know, I wasn't in leadership at the time, so I don't know why they did it, but they put 4 women at one of the men's jails, and it was a low-level jail, misdemeanor offenders, and I was there for 2 years, and it was a great opportunity for me not only to work with men in my profession, but also to work with male suspects and people who had been convicted of crimes who were men. So from there, I went to a patrol assignment in Fallbrook, worked there for 4 years, and was recruited to go to our street narcotics and gang unit. At the time, we started in what was called the judge unit. It was kind of a task force for juvenile probationary offenders. So I worked there for a few years and was recruited to work gangs in Vista. Worked there, was lucky enough to get recruited to work in our intelligence unit, which I really liked, and I stayed there for 10 years before being kind of pushed in and promoted to sergeant, and it's kind of a common theme. I think it's common with women that we don't always take advantage of opportunities. We're not as aggressive at promoting and doing those things, I don't think, as men are. So I was always sort of talked into different things, but eventually promoted up through the ranks, and as a captain, I was asked by the then Sheriff Gore to be the special assistant, which was probably the best management school I could have ever gone to work for him directly for about a year. And then he promoted me to commander. I was supposed to retire. He promoted me to commander, and then assistant sheriff asked me to be his under sheriff, and then asked me to run for sheriff. So that's kind of my background.
You know, and there's a theme, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Thank you for, I mean, literally, that is just amazing that you started here and look at you now. But it is kind of like women need to be tapped on the shoulder a little bit in law enforcement, and we can talk a little bit about that, but that's fascinating. Stephan is our district attorney, and Summer, also, are you from San Diego, or is that?
Bay Area.
Okay.
Since being a teenager, San Diego. Yeah.
Perfect. Can you hear Summer? District Attorney Summer Stephan has devoted her life to protecting the most vulnerable, children and elderly, and has been providing justice to the most vulnerable, as I mentioned, national leader in the fight against human trafficking and sexual exploitation. That is definitely something that you are on the map for, and thank you for fighting the good fight. Can you talk a little bit about your background and what has brought you to this top seat?
Well, I love my job, and I'm here because I want more women to go into law enforcement. It's such a noble profession. It's amazing at the end of the day how you feel that you actually gave someone a feeling of safety, which is one of the most important things. For me, it's a long story, but I went to UC. I graduated high school at 16 because high school was not fun. I transferred from an all-Catholic school to a public high school, and I was the #1 target at the school for everything, bullying, etc. So I had to get out of there fast, so I graduated at 16, went to UC Davis, and studied psychology, and my plan was to do something. I always knew I was going to do something in law enforcement. I didn't know exactly what that would look like. It started for me when I was 12 years old. I'm not going to take you through every year of my life, but I was a big reader. I was reading the National Geographic, and there was a picture of some girls in a part of North Africa, Socotra, that were my age, but looked very different than me. They had a look of fear in their eyes, and if you've ever looked at the National Geographic, you know how they take those images that really penetrate your heart. And I knew that whatever my rest of my life will bring, it will involve taking that look of despair and dignity and pain and suffering and fear, that look, away from someone's eyes. I knew that was going to be my mission. So I got a psychology degree at UC Davis, and I was exploring going into the FBI, which I knew they had some of the stringent backgrounds. So needless to say, I had no fun because I wanted to make sure I can get into the FBI, or I had good fun, I should say. And then I let my parents know that that's what I was going to do, and my dad just was like, I was 20, and he did not want me going all over the world. So I shifted quickly. The law school applications had closed. I decided, okay, to not terrify my dad, I'll become a prosecutor. So he feels I'm still in law enforcement, but I'm not, out on the street like these amazing women. And so I shifted, and all the law school applications had closed. And this is a lesson in itself in kind of just going after what you want. So I went and sat and waited for the dean at the only law school that the applications hadn't closed, and it was McGeorge School of Law at University of the Pacific. Waited for Dean Kelso, and I asked for 5 minutes. I explained to her the whole story, and she said, so you're telling me you don't really want to be a lawyer, but you're here because you want to be in law enforcement. She goes, something about that honesty is really appealing. I think we're gonna just admit you. So I got into law school that way. So sometimes it's just me, and that stayed with me. Being authentic, being not saying things in interviews that you think everybody wants to hear, but really being your true self, your passion. Doing that sometimes works, maybe not all the time. It worked for me, and I just loved law school. I ended up interning at the Sacramento DA's office and working many hours in the sex crimes division, and there was no turning back from that. That was going to be my career and my life. The only problem is then I applied. I was president of my law school. Again, it was hilarious because running for president of my law school, my theme was that I'm not making you any promises because I really don't know what I can actually do for you. And I won. So sometimes just, telling people the real deal is good enough. And the guy I won against, promised everybody he's going to be president of the United States. So far, that hasn't happened for him, but I wish him well. I hope that happens one day. Then I applied to be a deputy DA. I had an amazing resume. I had worked at the DA's office forever. Was not hired. Turned down again and again. At that time, I really didn't look like a DA. I don't know, there was no height requirement, but whatever it was, I didn't meet that requirement. And so it was really tough, and I ended up becoming a research attorney, which I absolutely hate. Again, that interview, I told the court that I really don't want to be a research attorney, but I want to be a DA, but I will give them a whole year, the best work that I can come up with, and that's what I did. They called me shoeless at the court because I worked so late that I had to take off my shoes, and they find me like at 11 o'clock at night. The sheriffs would see me walking the hallways to the library to do work, so I gave them a full year of hard work, and then a lot of the judges recommended me to be a deputy district attorney. So I came around it that way. I was hired in 1990, so 33 years ago, and rose through the ranks, doing every step of the way until I became the elected DA in 2018. So that's my whole life in a nutshell.
I love it, and I love your honesty, and I thank you for passing that along, because I think there's a lack of truth being told now. Whatever looks good here, right? But just say it like it is. So thank you for doing that, and look at you now. Chief Roxana Kennedy, and sorry we're sharing the mics here. And
I like her.
and I will say this is so awesome, by the way, sitting here with the three of these top dogs, females, and they all do get along. They all work together, and so that is what you're just really showing what it's supposed to be like. This is how you do it. So thank you. Chief Kennedy, you grew up in Chula Vista.
No, I grew up in San Diego County. I'm a native.
But you started working in Chula Vista and never has taken this uniform off. So I love that. And I look at you now.
Like I never did that.
Please take that uniform off. But let's talk a little bit about your path. And again, did you always want to go into law enforcement?
Ladies and gentlemen, I never in my life ever thought that I would be in law enforcement. I was very involved in sports, and I was one of those kids in high school that was junior class president, ASB president. I know that's hard for you guys to imagine. Leadership starts at a very young age. But law enforcement was never anything that I was ever even remotely interested in. No family in law enforcement. And I had an opportunity to have some tough things in business that happened to me. I was very involved in business and had a embezzlement case. It was a really tough case, and I had to do a lot of writing and things and working with a local police department. And through that, one of the female officers said to me, "You would be an amazing police officer." And I thought, me? And we call it the nudge. And she just kind of pushed my curiosity about law enforcement. And I started driving around and looking at officers more and watching them interact with people. And I started saying, I think I could do that. And I, had a successful business, but if anyone has been in business, you know that there's challenges in business. One month you're wealthy, the next month you're having a tough time paying your employees. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a job where I get an actual paycheck and I know exactly how much money I'm getting? And so I thought, I'm going to go put myself through Southwestern College Police Academy, and I'm going to still keep my business. I know you're going to laugh because all the jokes were made about me because the business that I was in, I owned multiple flower shops, okay? So they kept saying Guns and Roses to me all the time. I thought it was very funny for a long time at the police department as well when they found out what I did. But the business background that I have kind of established my trajectory in law enforcement. Put myself through the police academy. I was going to be back then you had marshals in the courts. I was going to work Monday through Friday as a marshal. That was my dream, right? And then on the weekends I'd do my business. And I just got the itch when I was in the police academy. And I decided that this was for me. Started off as an officer. I've only worn this uniform. I'm really honored that I've been able to be in law enforcement for almost 31 years for the same organization because I believe that and I'm sure you guys feel the same way, being a part of the good times, the bad times, the ups, the downs, the challenges is really what I think is important and maybe what's missing with some people. But started as an officer, and I tease people now because when I started as an officer, and I remember sitting in my first day in roll call and not knowing anyone and let me just say, I can write a book. It will come out after I retire. But there's been some interesting challenges that in my 31 years that I faced. But one of the things I tell people now is how you treat people makes a difference. And that you should look around the room, and especially when you sit in a roll call, and look at each person and how you value them. Because one day, that person sitting next to you might be your boss. And there's a difference when I talk about it at Chula Vista. It's called the heart behind the badge. So we say that the heart for service is super important. And it's what's behind the badge that makes the biggest difference. I've worked, just like everyone here, in that amount of time, we've worked a multitude of assignments. My most favorite assignment was working on a proactive street team unit. I just had a blast, rode bikes, did all kinds of stuff, had great stories, worked undercover operations, did all that. But I think right now the best thing that I do is being the chief of police. I believe it's a calling to be a leader and to do what's right for all those people that work in my department. Not just a sworn, for every single, the custodians at our department. How you treat people makes a difference. And you can never give up, and you have to follow your dreams. And look at, I think that we get an opportunity as female leaders to be very proud of the fact that I'm a female leader. I love it. And I think if you asked any of the people at my department, male or female, they look at me as the parent of the organization, and they are my kids, and I'm responsible for them. And it's my responsibility to make sure they have the tools and the training and everything necessary to be successful. And it's also my responsibility to fight for law enforcement. And right now, that is so important. So I encourage you, if you're not in law enforcement, it is the best job in the world. How many jobs do you get to go out each day and impact people's lives? And sometimes arresting someone changes their life for the better. It's the manner in which that you do it, treating people with dignity and respect and compassion. And when we started years ago, we never used that term, compassionate policing. That was like, oh, that's soft on crime. No, it's not. You can arrest someone, you can get, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, in law enforcement, we use force. Every single day we use force. The question you should be asking, was it reasonable and was it justified? And I tell my officers, if they have to get into those encounters with people, afterwards, you dust them off, you get them treatment if they need treatment, but you say, why did it happen? It didn't need to be like this. So it's a two-way street, and I think for a long time we didn't talk about that. I know I'm going all over the
No,
place.
I love
You know
it.
how I am. I'm sorry, if you give me a mic, it's gonna be.
The Roxana Kennedy show, which maybe we should think about that.
I really strongly believe that as law enforcement leaders, and both of my counterparts here are the same way, we're in law enforcement for a reason, because we believe in it. And it's important right now for leaders to stand up for law enforcement, because law enforcement is the most honorable profession, by far. I'm proud of what we do, and I hope that I would create a couple today. Okay, I know the sheriff's department is hiring two of the DAs. Chula, Vista, we just need 34. 34.
I love this, and I love your passion. So, and the recruiting, we're going to do this throughout the next hour. But you know, I do. I love to hear the passion in all of you and the compassion. And thank you for talking about the community policing and the heart behind the badge. It's a tough time we're living in right now. What I'd love to hear from all of you is that you're human, and that has been missing in media headlines or what, you know, we all want to point a finger, but I love that you talk about who you are, how you got there, but also to your officers, to your employees, and just having that compassion when you're on the streets. There's a lot of mental illness going on. And I know just Cameron being a Chula Vista police officer, when he calls, I am, you know, what can I do? I'm in church every morning. I'm on my knees praying, thanking God, and what a blessing. So as a mom that's kind of on the outside looking in a blue blood family, you know, what can other people do? I love the truth that you're telling, that we are all human. So, you know, when you make a stop or when you're prosecuting, but the people that are doing the hard work are also human. And to hear those stories, what can you say about that? I know we just heard from Chief Kennedy. What about you, Sheriff?
So you're talking about the deputies and officers out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we are the community. I mean, we're just as much a part of the community as any other member of the community. And I know that compassion and humanity really enter into what we do every day, and even more so now than when I started in this profession. So I'm really proud of the work we do every day. I got a text from an activist member of our community, and I'm really proud of the fact that I tried to talk and reach out to everyone. So it's really, I didn't mind getting this text, and I got it one day, and she was talking about how she saw a deputy with a woman and a child in his backseat, and she was so angry, so she went over and started videotaping and realized he was helping this family member, and she just wanted to share with me how proud it made her that one of my deputies was helping this woman and this child, and she had assumed the worst from the beginning. So it's really great that we're making an impact out there, and I think we're making an impact with everyone in most of the communities that in sheriff's jurisdiction, you know, we just signed a 5-year contract with all of our contract cities last year, because they really wanted to keep us and make sure that they had us for 5 more years at a minimum. So I'm proud of work our deputies and staff do every day.
Congratulations, that's great. What's something that you're all working on that the media doesn't know, the community doesn't know, that we can open up this forum and talk about? Summer, so talk about, I mean, you're amazing with what you have done in the community for human trafficking. And it continues. I mean, you, again, your compassion has made such a difference in the job you've done. So feel free to talk about this.
Well, thank you. You know, it's really amazing, and I don't take it for granted any single day that I get to live my dream. You know, I get to see those 12-year-olds that I couldn't help, that were in that National Geographic article, in the eyes of so many of our community that we can help. You know, every day I don't take it for granted, because I sit on some national posts as Vice President of the National DAs Association, how different San Diego is, what a role model San Diego is, having these relationships and respect, you know, for, even though I'm really glad I have some ammo now, I didn't know some of the stories, so thank you so much. But, you know, with all our male and female partners in law enforcement, they're all working so hard to keep the community safe. That's why when, you know, I set a goal, I know it's achievable, because it doesn't just take our office, it's every leader in law enforcement if they have the idea, we're all gonna support them if it's a good idea, and it usually is a good idea based in keeping people safe. So what we're doing is we're maintaining San Diego as the safest urban county in America. And I just want to focus on this one point because we've seen examples around the nation, and especially during COVID, we've seen examples of just the erosion of the rule of law, where people are literally beating old ladies in the street and getting away with it. You know, the Asian Pacific hate, you know, where we saw around the nation where nothing was happening and the rule of law wasn't being followed. People working in markets, in supermarkets, in different department stores, and people just coming in, cleaning out all the shelves, you know, retail theft, rampant. This is not acceptable for us in San Diego County because we believe that without safety, nothing thrives. Without safety, our children can't go, they can't focus on school. Our seniors can't smile and feel like they can, you know, live the better part of their life, not working so hard. Nothing actually grows. And you see the erosion of communities when it comes to a loss of public safety. So, you know, it's amazing to me. It doesn't mean everything isn't a journey and a work in progress. We spot mistakes. We're the first to judge ourselves and try to improve. And we must do that. And we have to remain accountable to the community. But what is amazing is even the thought that you wouldn't have the rule of law, you wouldn't have law enforcement, because those examples are rampant in history. Why do you think people want to come to this country? It's because of the rule of law, because of the protection of the law, because of incorruptible justice systems that function. It's so important. So for us, we have the luxury to create new things because we have the system is working. We have a great law enforcement, so we can imagine an even better day. So we, you know, worked hard on human trafficking. We became the only region with the Regional Human Trafficking Task Force to see a 27% shift to the better in human trafficking, in the sale of our children. We saw 27%, the rest of the nation of 1% variance. We measured it. We knew that working together in task forces, and you were there at the beginning of our Regional Human Trafficking Task Force in Chula, Vista too, at the forefront. We've made a difference. We now formed an Elder Justice Task Force. A lot of people don't know that our seniors, when you see a senior having to go back and work, it's because they're ashamed to tell their family that they lost their savings to a scam. We measured in 1 year, 1,700 seniors lost $49 million just in San Diego County, just in 2022. We were able, how did we do it? It's because we worked together, identifying the problem, measuring it through a fusion center, a law enforcement coordination center that was able to log all the reports. Now we know what our problem is. We come together again in a task force to fight it, to bring down these transnational fraud organizations that are ripping our seniors out of their savings. That's very, very important. Something we're working on every day, and many other initiatives that intersect with homelessness. We are working on a really good initiative to bring a modern technology application like a hotels.com to identify available shelter in real time that is suitable and appropriate. It's very, very exciting. I'm very proud of my 1,000 member team that has been working around the clock, and whatever I ask of them, they go beyond in making sure that we keep the community safe and that we work with law enforcement to do that.
Wow, thank you for what you're doing. Chief Kennedy, I wanted to ask you, we talked a little bit about what you have, the Live 911, and then of course the innovation in technology with Chula Vista with the drones, if you're not already aware, incredible. And I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that and what else is next.
Sure. So there's a lot of different training that we do at Chula Vista. We train 4 times more than what California Post requires for us to train on. Cultural competency is a real big training component right now. But we're really proud of what we're doing with innovation and technology. And, you know, I was mentioning earlier that I come from a time where you start in law enforcement and there really wasn't a lot of technology. We didn't even have, well, cell phones were brand new. You'll all laugh, but they were like the size of a big brick and you carried them in a thing and you only use your cell phone if it was an emergency because otherwise it was like, you know, $3 a minute for a cell phone call. You know, back then we had pay phones. I don't know if you guys know what those are, but pay phones, you would just go dial 911 to call into dispatch, but things have changed, right? And so now we look at technology a little bit differently, and I never thought that I would be utilizing drones to respond to actual radio calls, to provide information to our officers. And so my officers, dispatchers, the crime analysts, they can see live feeds of when the drone responds to a call. And we can see it on our cell phone, or we can see it on our MPC or on our computers. And it gives you a bird's eye view of what's happening and a picture before you get there. And if you're anything like me, I need to actually see something that help me kind of adjust, like, oh, okay, now that's what they mean. They're talking about that type of vehicle, and it's over in this location. So we have something else called Live 911, and my officers, through this software program, it's kind of similar in some ways. It has like geofencing, like when you call Uber or Lyft to come pick you up. Didn't you in the beginning think it was kind of odd? How do they know where I'm standing? They know where I'm at. They come here and pick me up. Well, the same thing happens when you dial 911 and you call us, and you might be the victim of a crime. And so, for instance, they'll say that the individual has a knife or he had a gun. I'm in the Walmart parking lot. And what dispatch commonly has to go through is a lot of questions. Okay, when people are traumatized, they don't always tell you everything, and they don't always get out the information correctly. And they might think that they're in the west side of the parking lot when actually they're in the east side of the parking lot. And actual seconds matter when someone's life is at risk. And so what we found with this Live 911 is my officers get into their patrol car and they can say, okay, today I'm working this beat. I want to be able to hear incoming 911 calls that are within a half a mile of wherever my patrol car goes. And so as they're driving through their beat, one of the calls that I'll give you an example of was a call from a hysterical mom whose little child had fell in the pool, and they found the baby face down and the baby was not breathing. And the mom was just hysterical, and the dispatcher was trying to give her information about how to, first off, where are you? And she didn't know because she was at someone else's house, and she was so hysterical, nobody knew exactly where she was. And then they're trying to give CPR instructions for her to help with the child. One of my officers was right around the corner and heard the Live 911 call and got there and was able to do CPR on the child and save the child's life. And that would have, the amount of time that it takes to get critical information sometimes is not the mistake of a dispatcher. They go through tremendous challenges trying to get information from people. They're typing in, what does he look like? And sometimes it can take forever just to get them to give you a description of the individual. And sometimes the information is not even correct, okay? So this has built a bond between our officers and our dispatchers that we never expected, because they now go, oh my gosh, I can't believe what the dispatcher has to go through to just try to get information. And that was not the dispatcher's fault. That person gave the dispatcher completely incorrect information. But it gets my officers there quicker. And with the drone, you use that on top of that. These drones, the example that I like to show is a call comes in from multiple people of a man with a gun. Okay, that's going to heighten everyone's sensitivity to everything that's going on. Man with a gun, he's sitting in front of the taco shop, he's waving it around, he's acting erratically. We don't know. Is he under the influence? Is he mentally ill? What's happening with this individual? Because most people don't go sit at a taco shop waving a gun around as they're talking, right? So people were like, oh, whoa, what's going on here, right? And my drone operator is like, oh, I'm going to roll to that call. I'm going to roll there, and he gets there in 90 seconds. 90 seconds, that's quick. Through traffic, all that, right? Starts feeding information to the officers as they're responding. And as he's watching this individual, the individual at one point, through some time, puts a gun up towards his mouth. Now, at that time, I was actually in the drone room, and we thought, is this individual going to commit suicide, which would be a very difficult thing for everyone to have to watch, right? But then he also takes the other hand and picks up a cigarette, and he puts it in his mouth. And he took what appeared to be a gun and lit the cigarette. And you can actually see him puffing smoke into the air. That changes everything, okay? Officers are still going to be careful, vigilant, aware, but the tragedy of officers responding to calls with limited information is, to me, this is revolutionary. So we're not, as you'll read newspaper articles and you'll read things, the activists paint a different picture. They paint a picture of surveillance, police state. What I want you to know is I believe it's my responsibility as a chief of police to give my officers every tool possible for them to de-escalate situations and for them to go home safely to their families, for the community to be safer, and for the subjects that we encounter to be safer. So to me, technology, when it's used the right way, is an invaluable tool for law enforcement, and you're going to really start seeing a lot of this. We had no idea when we started using drones that this would be where they would go, but now we're on an international front where Chula Vista is very well known for innovation and technology, and I think that it's really important for law enforcement to be aware of modern policing and where we're going.
That's amazing, and I love that you're operating a drone too, aren't you?
I am now a Martinez center pilot. At my home, my neighbors all know that I check everyone's solar panels. And I check to see if, were there any coyotes up there in the back of your house? But it's definitely, I wanted to do it so that I could understand more as I talked about it for my officers.
That's great. I love that style of leadership as well. Sheriff, what about you in the Sheriff's Department? What are you working on? What are things that we don't know about?
Yeah, technology, I appreciate so much Roxana leading the way with a lot of technology that she's done in this region, and I think we're all doing that. I know Summer's with her app and a lot of work that she's doing. Our jails, as everyone knows, have been in the news a lot, and there's a lot of technology that we're bringing to our jails that are really helping us work smarter, not harder. So we've upgraded the wireless systems in our jails so that it can, or we're in the process of doing that. Hopefully we'll be done early next year. But there's a lot of things in the jails that we're doing. We are testing out a biometric device that we put on people so that we can tell whether they're breathing or if their heart rates are changing or different things that are going on. Because frankly, we can't watch people 24 hours a day. So if we can have that advance notice, and deputies are all going to be carrying cell phones in the jails. We have 5 more cameras in the jails now. We're testing out RFID technology and ways to track movement of individuals in the jail. We can do everything through an app now with them. They'll have a chip in there on their wristband so that we can tell whether they, as far as their commissary, when they receive commissary, handing out razors, it'll tell us if that individual shouldn't have a razor, for instance. It'll tell us their medical history, who they are. We'll be able to do cell checks instead of having to go back and log those checks at the deputy stations. There's a lot of technology we're doing. We're going to give devices to everyone who's in our custody to help them have visitation. They'll be able to do their commissary orders. They can go to school. They can entertain themselves. It's really a lot that we're doing in the jails to not only facilitate training and teaching and job skills for people who are in our custody. Hopefully when they get out of custody, they'll go back and they'll be less likely to reoffend. So that's the major technology we're doing on the department, but we have a lot of things also coming to our patrol deputies as well.
Excellent. Well, I also wanted to ask you about outreach, and is it called the Respect Program? This is for females and males, or tell me a little.
Yeah, so the Respect Project started a few years ago. I think this is that one. a few years ago, and it was funded through the Board of State Community Corrections, and it's a program that helps kids that are in high school that are gang involved or they're having some issues. They maybe don't have the right support at home, and it's a mentoring program. And we started, I think we're on our third graduating class of young girls now. And so it's really a place for them to go get homework help. They can go and just be mentored by deputies. They get activities that maybe they wouldn't be exposed to. There's a food pantry there, there's clothing there, because a lot of these kids don't have a second pair of shoes or, second pair of shorts. And so, and it's been really successful. We've had kids come back from the military. Our deputies never lose touch with these kids. They text them all the time. They call them. They'll drop in. The deputies have been invited to weddings and baby showers and christenings, and so it's really great. We want to expand that program into our Spring Valley area, Lemon Grove, so hopefully in the next couple of years we'll be able to do that. So that's just one of our youth programs. We have a Spanish Citizens Academy that's, I think, on its fourth or fifth iteration right now of 50 community members, and it helps. It's outreach for our refugee and immigrant communities and teaches them about law enforcement in San Diego County and how to navigate all those different systems, empowers them not to be afraid of law enforcement, and just really helps educate them on things like domestic violence. And I know we've been partnering with Summer with her terrific One Safe Place and holding some of those events at that location. So it's been a wonderful program. Yeah.
That's great, and I love to hear about these partnerships. Talk about that domestic violence program. What is that about?
It's really terrific. It was a dream for me to open a family justice center in the North County. There was one in downtown. What a family justice center is a one-stop shop. Like, think about instead of going someplace to buy your potatoes and another place to get, some other vegetable, you're all going to this one place and getting everything that you need if you're a victim of crime. Domestic violence, human trafficking, elder abuse, because the trauma is so much, it's overwhelming, that handing victims what we used to do, a resource of here's a list of places you can go for your children to get therapy, for you to get therapy, for you to find housing now that you're leaving an abusive relationship, for you to get retrained for a job if you've depended on the abusive partner all your life. It's impossible. And we ask why do people stay in these abusive relationships? Because the alternative is not as easy as you might think. Getting away might mean that you can't feed your children, you can't put a roof over your head. It's an overwhelming experience. So Family Justice Centers actually started in San Diego County, and now it's an international best model to address victim-survivor trauma. So we know that studies show children then grow up to become victims, more susceptible to being victims, normalizing that, or become abusers. And so the best method to, people talk about interrupting the school to prison pipeline, is intervening early and creating new pathways for healthy relationships. Knowing that we saw that in the North County region, we actually had much higher numbers of domestic violence murders. 27% of the reports, but 46% of the murders. The thing that was missing is the services that interrupted the violence before it happened. And so it was my dream to open one. I started right away on it as soon as I became the DA in 2018, and we opened on July 5th of last year, 2022. Over 2,000 victims and survivors have come through, and their lives have been really transformed. 1,700 came back for more services. 200 kids were served. People, even the pets are getting service. They're getting their shots. We have 90 collaborations with law enforcement. Sheriff Martinez is there with her team. We have a whole floor for all of the North County law enforcement. So you can file a report or not. You're going to get services anyway. But if you wanted to file a police report, it's right there for you. You don't have to then travel to the police station. We have Palomar Hospital with all their trauma services, the sexual assault exams, the domestic violence strangulation exams, the forensic child exams, everything is in one place, and it's very beautiful. So I welcome you to visit it. It's a real surprise when you walk in. There's more recycled timber in there than I think anywhere, at least in San Diego County. It's beautiful.
How wonderful and incredible. Thank you for implementing all of that and seeing it realized. That's amazing. I wanted to shift this bit and talk to Chief Kennedy, and then I'm going to open it up to questions for all of you. But how has your faith helped you in your law enforcement career?
Faith is absolutely everything to me. It is what gets me up in the morning. It's what keeps me going through the challenges. I believe, as I said earlier, that there's a reason why I'm in a position. I tell my officers sometimes when they have tough calls, I had one officer, I always check on them, and she was very upset over the fact that she did CPR and this man died. And I said to her, she said the family was there and they were all watching me. And I said, and so they saw you making the effort to try to save his life. And she said, yeah. I said, do you realize that there's a reason why you were the officer that went to that call? There's a reason why you made all the effort that you did, and the family saw the effort that you put into it, but it was his time. And so you were there, you helped them. And then she said, Chief, do you know? And she was crying, that they were hugging me and they were saying thank you for everything that I did. And I think that sometimes we have to make sure that our officers understand. I think there's a purpose in everything that we do. And for me, faith is what gets me through it. Faith is what's kept me in this position, as probably with you guys for long past the time that we should be gone. I'm old. I don't know if you know that. I appreciate you put my young picture up there. I appreciate that. But faith is my foundation. And so without it, and I think maybe when you look sometimes at certain things that are happening in the world, there's people that don't have faith. Faith is what gets me through everything. I don't think life's supposed to be easy. I don't think law enforcement is supposed to be easy. I didn't go into this job because I thought it was going to be easy. I went into this job because I thought I could make a difference. And I know that as long as I have God by my side, and I make every effort, and I treat people with dignity and respect, and I lift them up when they're down in their dumps. I tell people, it's what you say. Officers have, and employees, dispatch, all of you. The way you treat people and what you say has a lasting impact. And when you are, I believe, you don't have to have faith, but I believe faith is like I said, my foundation. Those words matter, and how you treat people through their challenges, I think it makes a huge difference. So I couldn't imagine not having faith.
It really has shaped who you are and how you run your department, all of you. I want to thank you. Well, I want to open up to any questions anyone may have for any of them. Ms. Sardina in the back.
Hello, I'm Teresa Sardina, news reporter, KUSI News. I just want to say this is so inspiring, and it's been such a pleasure working with Sheriff and DA and also Chief of Vista. We're talking about recently the low recruitment numbers in law enforcement in the county. What can the county do to recruit more women in law enforcement? You want to start?
Well, I think we need to start having a conversation about all that is great in law enforcement. And the loudest voices aren't always the correct voices. And I think that highlighting all the roles and all the effort in law enforcement to really help people through the challenges of life. And I like I said to my officers, like we deal with people usually through the biggest challenges in their life. It's not usually a great day when we go. Sometimes we get to walk grandma across the street, or we get to make a huge difference when we help a child who's been, abused. But it's usually a tough situation. And I think that this is National Police Week. And there are many people who put their lives on the line every day. And I think people need to really realize that there's something to be said about a person who, when shots are being fired, they run towards the shots being fired and risk themselves to help someone that they don't even know. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a calling. That is a profession that should be admired and respected and held up. And what we see right now is that people only talk about the negativity. There's negativity in every aspect of the world. There is negativity. Why are we focused on the negativity? That's our job. If we have a problem individual, like when people talk about bias, I tell them what my officers are supposed to do. And if you want to point out to me somebody that is biased, I will deal with that because I have no tolerance for that, okay? But I think that we have to, as a region, stand up for all that's good and stop allowing the loud voices that are the minority and that are incorrect. All you have to do, we were talking in the back of the room about some of the stuff I saw on Nextdoor about all these crimes that were occurring, and so I read it and I go look and nobody even called the police. And then they're criticizing why the police didn't do something about it, and how can we do something about what you're not sharing with us, right? And so we all have to come together and realize when you look at other areas throughout the United States that have defunded, they've not defunded us in San Diego County, okay? We've been devalued, but we have not been defunded. But we all need to stand up for all that is good in law enforcement because we do not want to end up like some of these communities that have no policing. Look at what is happening in other areas, and I don't need to tell you names. You all watch the news. But law enforcement is important. And when you need help, you call 911, and we come, no matter what, to help you. Even if you were that one person who was out there speaking negatively about law enforcement, and we've had those opportunities to respond to their homes, and with grace and with dignity, we still help, we don't judge, and I hope that we're able to change people's opinions by what we do. But I think all of you, every one of us, play a role in changing the negativity that has been out there.
Yeah, and Teresa, I appreciate that. I think a little more to Chief Kennedy's point as well, I think education. I think a lot of women don't really know what this job is, and it's a little intimidating, and a lot of parents don't really understand. I think a lot of parents are afraid for their daughters going into this profession, so they lean towards the federal FBI or DEA or some of those jobs where they think it might be a little safer. But it's, as we've all discovered, it's super gratifying just to be in law enforcement. To be a woman in law enforcement has its challenges, but it's also uniquely satisfying, I think, to be able to give back to the communities. And we've recently, and I know KUSI has featured some of our women deputies with their children on your show, which is really phenomenal because that's one of the biggest fears is how am I going to raise my children and be a mom and be a wife and be, all of the other roles that we do in our communities and our society. So I think just education, letting them know that it's definitely doable and it's very valuable.
No, I think it's been said well, but I think it's all about the stories, and having the face of these leaders. I can bet that is going to encourage women as being able to see Sheriff Martinez and Chief Kennedy. And I think telling the stories and really we appreciate the media. We know that you're very responsible in bringing out that balance. Of course we have to tell the negative stories, we have to be transparent, but there are so many overwhelmingly amazing good stories. And human beings, we learn through stories. We like to see people that look like us, that we can relate to, and so I think the more these stories are told, the more people are going to be drawn to this amazing, noble profession.
Very nice. And you're all moms as well, so it's been a work-life balance, hasn't it? And grandma, congratulations. Oh, I love that. Anybody else have any questions? Carly.
I know a lot of hesitation of women joining law enforcement is not being taken seriously. especially in your roles of leadership? What advice would you give young girls looking to join law enforcement?
Well, I think Summer hit it really early in the conversation, authenticity. I think as long as you're your true self and people know that you've got integrity and you can, you tough it out. I have some women deputies that I've talked to, they're small in stature, and they get really tired of guys not thinking that they can handle themselves until they see them handle themselves. So I think we all end up proving ourselves, and sometimes you have to prove yourself over and over and over in this job. Maybe not, men don't have to do that as often, but I think it's just one of the challenges that we face.
Yeah, I think coming at the job as a human being, not as a woman, even though you are a woman and you bring that authentic self, but I think leading with all of your human qualities that make you who you are. So, I mean, that's the advice I would give, and then just doing the best you can. Is it true that mistakes are amplified more still today with women? That probably is still true, something we have to work on. But sometimes the mistakes are amplified with women because we sometimes are really hard on ourselves, and we really and each other, and we really highlight those mistakes, right? So I think what we're building is also a culture of women supporting other women, lifting up other women, and really amplifying all the positive. So that's also something that we're seeing more of, and hopefully we can lead on that.
If you want to say something.
Of course she does. And I think that men have been some of my best mentors in law enforcement. But it was challenging. It still continues to be challenging at times. And so you have to understand you're working in a male-dominated environment. And that in itself gives you strategy to learn how to maneuver through it. Working with mentors and other women, not in a negative way, but talking about the challenges that you face and how do we strategically move through this. And I'll give you an example, and it gets better when you get female leaders. So we're kind of paving a pathway for you. We're leaving our footprints that you can follow. Before, it was like I was the first female chief of police, Kelly's the first female sheriff, and that in itself is already setting you up for your success for the future. But when I became a lieutenant, I had and one of the officers was saying, I can't believe this. They were all in a group just chatting. These women just get pregnant so they can go and get a detective assignment. And I think my head just swiveled quickly. And I said, what? I said, you think, seriously, that a woman gets pregnant so she can go work in a detective assignment for 4 months? A kid is forever. They don't get pregnant to just go for 4 months of experience, okay? I said, I won't say exactly what I said, and I wasn't achieving. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, right? If I ever hear you say something like that again, blah, blah, blah. But he thought about it for a while, and everyone looked at me. But that's sometimes how people think. And he was not a bad person, okay? But
I think she's bringing up a great point. Always confront that stuff when you hear it. Don't be afraid to.
But he didn't even think. He didn't even realize what he was saying, because what he wanted was to have that opportunity to go into a detective assignment and get a little more experience. And this person was not a hard charger, and that probably wouldn't happen, right? But it was easy to say something like that. If you don't address things, they continue, but you have to come at it not just yelling at them, but explaining, seriously, you think that's what people do. So, but I mean, there's been so many changes in my time frame. I'm sure we could all sit there and tell you funny stories about things that have happened throughout our career. I mean, I can tell you about shooting on the range, and as a woman having smaller fingers, and they give me this big huge gun that I couldn't even get my finger into the trigger on the first pull, pulling it out of my holster. And I didn't say anything because you keep your mouth shut, you just do what you're told, and that's the gun they give you, right? But when I became a lieutenant, I was able to say, I don't know if you looked around, but there's many men here that have some small hands as well. And your life might depend on me having that first shot that I can get on target right away. You might want to consider having, grips that fit all hands, and they change things, right? Because because what we do sometimes is we don't want to say anything because we don't want to create an issue, right? And we're not the whiner. And many women who are in the law enforcement world take a lot, okay? But what I've learned is there's a way that you can say things without coming across defensive, but coming across from a training point and showcasing that, hey, we need to take these things on because seriously, every one of those people that you work with out there in the field as a patrol officer or a deputy they might be relying on you one day to save their life. And that's the way they need to think about it. And we shouldn't be picking on each other, we should be lifting each other up.
Amen. I love this. Thank you so much for your time. We have some Jersey Mikes back here, so for anyone who might be hungry, and then you can feel free to mingle a little bit. But thank you for your courage, for your integrity, for your truth, and for speaking to women in law enforcement leadership. I'm just such a fan, and you're all heroes to me. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time out today. I think somebody said it, challenging times create opportunities, and it is truly a challenging time, but look at the opportunities that you have created. So thank you. I also have, you have a question?
I actually wanted to thank you. I'm a living testimony of what you do matters. So hard for me.
You can come up here, you want to talk on the mic so everybody can hear you?
So 12 years ago, I live in North County, San Diego, and in Carlsbad, and at that time, sadly now shooting is not uncommon, but this was a time when our children, it's not part of the norm to do shooting drills, which now it is, but 12 years ago, our community was rocked because a man jumped over the fence during my daughter's elementary school. My first daughter was age 7, and my older one was in 5th grade, and she was thankfully in a field trip. And he jumped over the fence and he started shooting open fire to all the children, and 2 kids were shot. And so our community was forever changed by this incident. And it's hard for me to talk about even now, even though we're healed in so many ways, but I just was compelled to come here to thank Summer because of you and what you do and all of you ladies do, because you do make a difference. The way you handled all of us, just the children, my kids, it makes a huge difference. And even today, Summer, we haven't seen each other since then, but you still come to my mind, and I'm always so grateful to you. And that's why it's full circle, because my daughter Mia, who is actually one of the potential witnesses, so Summer actually prepared her for a testimony, and she was so traumatized, but Summer was just compassionate, empathetic, not just to her, all the kids and all us mothers and dads, really. And my older daughter knows, she has and so Mia, she couldn't be here today because she's in San Diego, Mesa Community College in classes. She's the one that alerted me about this event, and she said, "Mom, it's Summer." And I said, "Oh my gosh." That's all we all So I just have to thank you, Summer, and all you ladies, because I admire you all, and you really do make a difference. I'm not very eloquent, but it's just very emotional, but everything you do, you just do everything with a heart, and I just remember you talking to me through the whole justice system because I was so overwhelmed and didn't know, should I have her testify, should I not? And you just was so compassionate and patient and educated me through the system and spoke to me like a human being, and I just so appreciate that. So thank you for all the work.
There's not a dry eye in the house right now, right? And I'm sure thank you so much for sharing that.
Okay, ladies, I'm a sympathy crier, so please.
It's what we do, right? Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment. Thank you, all of you, because I know all of you individually, I'm on Chief Rox's board and Chula Foundation, But of all the boards I'm on and what I'm involved in, you know, the law enforcement ones, and I run a marketing company. So every time I'm out there in the community, I make sure I go to every sheriff's deputies. They freak the most. Who are you? What are you doing? Thank you, Summer, for everything you do, because I interact with the attorneys and the judges, and to everybody standing with PD and Chief Rox, even all the officers. And I'm very happy to see when I go to the Padre games now, there's always a young female officer, and the same with the gentleman with her. And I always go, thank you for your service. Now they know me when I walk in. But more people need to see that, because I have more people reaching out to me every day. Why do you support our law enforcement? Why are you on the boards? And I said, I believe in law enforcement. I believe in the blue. And even on social media, we know, sometimes you're going to be blasted, but you have to do it. And that's what makes our country whole. So thank you, all of you. It's a pleasure to be here today. And Kimberly, to your whole family. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's so nice to hear full circle when something good happens and it comes back to you. So thank you for standing up, and thank you, all of you, for being here today. We appreciate it. There's a little basket with a little blue bag in there, and this is just Sister Mary Kimberly coming out. Thank you. It's a little St. Benedict medal that has been blessed, and a police officer's prayer. So please feel free to take one. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for making such a difference and being here today.
Thank you.